Speed.
Welcome to the... No, wait. Hold on. Guys,
We'll clip it out.
people
It's
of
fine.
Earth. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about whether you can be a digital nomad with no experience. And Michelle, you seem like somebody who might know. Can you be a digital nomad with no experience? And what even would it mean to have experience? Like what kind of experience do you need to be a digital nomad? Like, I don't know. Orient us for this journey into the world of digital nomadism.
Nomadism?
Nomadicism. We'll add another
Nomadicy.
ism to that. Can you be a digital nomad without experience? The answer is yes, but it's more difficult, as always, with less experience. But this season's all about
What experience are you wanting to know about? Because how could you start who has experience as a digital nomad?
Well, speaking of who even are we? What is this? What are we doing here?
Well, I was about to introduce all of
I
us
knew
when
you
someone
were, but then
shouted out,
Anne-Marie zipped
pause.
Sorry, jeez. My glasses are really skewed today.
Yeah. Maybe we should have that as our intro. I'm starting and someone interrupts me, and then somehow we just end up.
I gotta say, guys, I think we've got them hooked. Y'all are not, I can tell y'all aren't gonna go to the next video off of this. They're sucked in. They want to know. They want to, who are these people? What is this? And so let's keep them waiting. And let's keep going. So Michelle, I do think that is a good question. Like, what kind of experience? I mean, because there are different kinds of things that are related to being a digital nomad. Because, like, on the one hand, I mean, usually you're going to need to be able to provide for yourself. You're going to need to be able to have some idea how to make your way around in the world. Am I missing anything?
Those are the main ones, I think. Yeah, you want to have experience in a bit of both to make your life a bit easier for yourself. Well, whilst you can definitely do it without the experience, it is nice to have already traveled abroad before or solo traveled before if you're traveling on your own. And at the same time, it's nice that you've already got some experience working not at the office. I guess it almost goes without saying that 99% of digital nomad jobs are jobs that are typically done in an office. Like a bricklayer isn't going to be a digital nomad because you can't do it digitally. So yeah, having some experience.
You could be nomadic as a bricklayer, and like
you could be nomadic,
but
not a digital nomad, which is specifically what Anne-Marie, Roy, and Michelle are talking about in this first season of Diff'rent.
Nice. Got the intro.
See what I did? You don't have to wait till the next episode to figure out what's going on.
It'll be a challenge for you to get the intro in there.
I just have to slide
so in that case,
it.
You would be a Masonic nomad in that case. If you were a bricklayer.
That's great. A Masonic nomad. I like that.
Yeah. But like I was saying, you do need some experience in just working from different locations that is not your normal office to make things a little bit easier. And then having the extra travel experience is good because then you don't need to figure that part out per se before you're just throwing everything together. So like knowing and having a bit of experience of like landing in a new country and finding place to work or to stay at, or like how am I going to get a taxi, Uber here, because Uber in Mexico, yes, it exists, but it's less than, I don't know what it was, a Grab that was there. But like every country has its own popular ride sharing app, and like knowing those beforehand is good. Just your basics from traveling solo are useful to have. And then work-wise, maybe Anne-Marie, do you have any
I'm
specific
gonna go.
experience tips?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna
Well,
go
actually,
more.
yeah. So, I mean, Anne Marie, what would you say, just in terms of like, maybe you could give us kind of the reality and then the ideal, in terms of what sort of experience did you have the first time you really set out to digital nomad, and what, based on that experience, would you recommend to other people?
Yeah, so when I so I'll break it down into a couple things. So I started working remotely. Like I took baby steps with this whole thing, like very slow baby steps. I started working remotely in 2013 for a company while living somewhere. So I was able to sort of get used to the remote work aspect of things and get used to what it's like to not be highly social. So like remote work is very can be very lonely. You have no reason to leave the house, especially especially with Amazon, and grocery delivery and things like that. And like I was living with a partner at the time, so and I had dogs. Like I literally, other than walking my dogs, had zero reason to leave the house. Um, so I kind of was able to get used to that first. Then I ended up doing more like just solo travel in shorts to see if I liked solo travel. So like 2 weeks or a month or whatever. Um, and then ended up going the self-employed route. I actually went self-employed before I started the solo travel. Went the self-employed route. I ended up saving money, stopped working, traveled for several months, 4 to 6 months or something. Um, Committed to the nomad lifestyle, then started doing the digital thing. So then I added work back in, because I just lived off of savings for a while. So I sort of baby stepped it. Um, but like Michelle said, like having experience with even 2 week or 3 week or 1 month stints of travel before committing to the nomadic lifestyle is quite important in my opinion. Um, and then having that remote work experience for me was super important because if I hadn't already had several years used to that, it wouldn't have happened. Like it would have just been like, oh, but I could go out and I'll do all these fun things, and like I would not have felt the responsibility necessary to commit to all of that. It just wouldn't have happened. Like I already knew what worked for me and what didn't work for me in terms of remote work. So
So,
yeah,
for people, for newbies, you would recommend what?
I would recommend figure out if you can do remote first because remote is not for everyone. You might think it's for you and it might not be for you. You might not realize how extroverted you are. And two, start with small, like start with vacations, like long vacations, where you aren't working, and you're just fully dedicated to the travel thing, but do it alone because that also helps you recognize if you can handle that alone.
What
Yeah.
about budget? Michelle, you got any recommendations in terms of how much of a bankroll do you need to get out there, and you just need like a big bag of money?
Um, for I don't think I've ever sat down and looked at like solo digital nomad costs per se. I know as a solo traveler, staying in hostels and living the backpacker life, you can do it with 1,000 US or €1,000, which is a little bit more. Um, that way you can live quite
Per
comfortably per month.
month.
Per month. As a digital nomad, you have other expenses. You tend to live and work places that are not, the lowest or the cheapest that you can get. So I would say 1,500 a month for a solo digital nomad. Of course, depending on where you go and your tastes and everything. I think it's safe
How
to
many
say
activities you
that,
do.
yeah, I think it's safe to say with the majority of digital nomads that want to do it for the first time, they will either go to the places that we've already talked about, being Central, South America, Southeast Asia kind of locations, because those are the most accessible and easiest to begin with. Of course, if you're being a digital nomad in Europe, depending on where you are, you to increase that number and make it a little bit higher. Although for Southern Europe, I think 1,500 a month is still sufficient to live off
Still
of.
doable, like
It's
Portugal,
still doable. Yeah.
Italy, certain
Yeah.
parts of Italy.
One thing with the budget though is, I'm thinking of this because it's the season at the moment here in the Netherlands, but
Feels like
you can
is this
deduct
one?
a bunch of stuff as a business expense, just as an added extra, which, as long as you keep track of those, at the end of the year, that 1,500 is going to be a little bit lower because you can deduct it.
Right. What about you, Anne-Marie? Any thoughts on budget? You just look like a big dark wall.
I know. My camera just decided it doesn't want to exist anymore.
Disappeared.
I would say that I agree that in the cheaper countries, 1,000 to 1,500 USD is probably pretty sufficient. I would say though, as a solo traveler, a solo digital nomad, you're potentially going to spend more per person than you would. I'm not going to have a face for the rest of the podcast. Sorry, guys. You will potentially spend more as a solo traveler than you would as a couple, because typically you can get enough space for two people for less than what would be double for one. So if you're spending $400 a month on a bed for one person, you could probably spend $700 a month for two people rather than 800. But additionally, as a single person, I think usually you end up getting a bed somewhere. You don't necessarily rent a space that's big enough for you to work in your house. So you might end up going to a co-working space or a cafe or something like that. And those costs are going to typically be higher than what it would be for two people to rent maybe a 3-bedroom apartment, and then use one of those rooms as an office. Of course, also as a single person, you have more reason to want to get out and about, go into co-working spaces, etc., just to meet people, to prevent you from getting lonely. Unless you're one of those people who loves to just be alone constantly,
I want
which,
to commend
it's okay.
Michelle on not making a joke about the red light district or anything like that. Good job, Michelle.
Didn't think of that at all.
Michelle doesn't even think of the red light
I
district.
saw you thinking about that. It was funny. I still think it was funny. I'm going to give you credit for the joke, even though you didn't make it. Go on, Anne-Marie.
Roy, you should probably understand that we live in the Bible Belt of the Netherlands.
You don't have to be a what would you call it? What do you call somebody who's the opposite of a pure? You don't have to be a libertine to be able to make that funny joke that Michelle.
But we just don't even live near the red light district. It doesn't even cross our mind.
Everybody, no, it's not even about.
We forget it
So you're thinking about
exists.
Amsterdam, obviously. is
Yeah.
the best known red light. But doesn't everywhere have like? I mean, I think everybody. The red light district is just the part of town where you go to do that kind of stuff.
I,
It's not
I've only
a.
seen it in Amsterdam. I think it's actually called that in other
Oh,
countries because it quite
well,
literally is red
maybe so,
lighted
but it's
in
still,
Amsterdam. Like,
I
it's
think
still.
quite
most
Look
funny.
up.
most towns have a place that
Here we
If you
go. Look.
haven't
you can
if
go
you
If you
to.
haven't
look up
been
in
to
the dictionary,
Amsterdam.
if you look up in the
Oh no,
dictionary, it
I
just says
understand.
noun,
It's
an
just
area of town. I think the confusion is that I said the red light district when I meant the, as in like what I'm saying is to a red light district. So I think maybe that's what is he was thinking a red light district, but then I said the red light district. We have a disconnect, and he
which
forgot
is
the. He
Amsterdam.
probably even at this point he
That
probably
is
doesn't even
the one.
remember. He probably doesn't even remember the joke he was going to make anymore.
I don't even know what
No,
you're talking
because I wasn't
about.
going to make it to begin with.
See, he
It
forgot.
didn't
He
cross my
totally
mind.
forgot. It just totally
Was it
slipped
about
out of his
being
mind.
lonely?
So
Um anyway, yeah, I think if you're traveling together, you can probably get by off of less. If you're traveling alone, you do need a little bit more, like 1500. Also, like if you're not digital nomading and you're traveling, you can get by off of less because you can do a lot more like exchange of services. So example, you can
Michelle,
work.
I
You can
admire
work.
I admire his restraint. That is very impressive.
Uh, if you're not digital nomading, you can work in a hostel in exchange for a bed to sleep in, rather than in exchange for pay. So you end up
What do
working
you do?
20
Clean the
hours a week.
toilets?
No, you run the front desk or whatever.
Or
Okay, I
clean
Most
can do
people
that.
toilets.
maybe clean toilets, bring people bedding, whatever. Um, but a lot of hostels actually are run by people who are just working for free. Well, I guess they're working in exchange for a place to sleep
And remind
and
people
live.
of your rule about how much you ought to spend for a hostel.
Oh yeah, never spend more than you would pay for lunch.
And if that's the case, I mean, I don't know. I guess if you're just working, it kind of just comes down to like whatever it's worth to you. But um, I mean, you don't want to be doing more work than the hostel's worth either. But I don't really know how you'd figure that out. Um,
Yeah. I mean, working 20 hours a week in exchange for a free place to stay seems pretty fine to
it
me,
seems,
but
I think so, but I would have to do the math. I would have to convert my hours working into my lunches,
yeah,
you
valid.
know?
Valid. I really wish I could get
Um,
my camera to work again, guys. I'm sorry.
honestly, I don't even remember. I would, this is how you look to me. You're a circle
You
with an
forgot
A
what I
in it.
look like now.
I wouldn't even, I would, honestly, I would feel like I was talking to a stranger. Um,
Fantastic.
so what about skills? And not just, I don't think this really is just like work skills, but like any kind of personal skills or just what are the things that you I don't know if you already have these skills then you should feel like hey maybe I'll be able to be successful as a digital nomad with no experience and if you don't have them maybe you try to cultivate them. What would those experiences be, Michelle?
Well, the one thing that comes to mind right now is boundary setting and separating
Mm.
work and life. I think we talked about this before as well, but when you're traveling, it's really easy to just let work slide to the side so you can go to the red light district or something with your friends.
It's Wacky Wednesday here in the States, so don't feel free to let loose. We're celebrating
Oh,
Dr.
okay,
Seuss.
okay, okay. No, that's the one thing that comes to mind. That separating work and life is important as a skill in general. I think just basic financial skills will be good. You'll have to do a little bit of extra work to figure out where you're at the end of the month if you're working with foreign currencies. Just to summarize the whole thing, financial, be good with money stuff, which I'm not.
Yeah, the be good with money
Um,
stuff. I took that class.
yeah.
I
And
didn't do great.
just, I don't know, have a good routine going for you, and even though it's a routine, still be comfortable adapting and adjusting it based on where you are currently living, because you can't always have breakfast in the same way or have a cafe to work from 5 minutes away. Sometimes it takes 30 minutes to go there by bus or by train or whatever. Or
Mm,
if your whole routine is meditate 5 minutes in the morning or 10 minutes as you get out of bed, but suddenly you're staying in a 6-bed dorm room where you don't have that option the same way you did as when you were living in an Airbnb. But like, have those routines and adapt them, but still stick to them. And try not
yeah,
to let them fall apart.
that's an interesting little wrinkle that it would there, because personally I know how important having a routine is, just working remotely in general, and then especially moving, um, because right now we are switching back and forth between the in-laws. You got to have a routine, but different places kind of make it harder to keep that routine, so you have to be adaptable. But uh, that idea of, like, you're in a hostel maybe, or you're having to find a co-working space or whatever, I would think that that would be much more of a challenge, and you'd really have to be committed to that idea of having a routine and be very flexible and able to change, to fit your circumstances. What about you, Emery?
So, I
I
mean,
feel
what
like
I
I'm
was
taking a
thinking
leap of faith every time I ask you a question. I'm just taking a little leap of faith that you're actually there on the
that
other
I'm
end of
even
that
here.
black darkness. Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried so many times to get this camera to turn back on, and I have to refresh the browser to make it happen. And I'm hosting this session, so,
Mm,
don't
yeah.
think we can do that. In the future, I will, make it so that if my camera wiggles slightly, it doesn't like just disconnect. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would have worded. Mine was kind of the same thought as Michelle's. That like I kind of approached it from a slightly different perspective, but being highly organized, with a strong sense of responsibility. You have to be really capable of committing to working when there are people that you're meeting who may ask you to come do other things. If you know you have a meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, you're out the night before. Uh, same as same as it would be at home. You can't stay out drinking till 4 in the morning. I mean, I guess you
Mm,
could, but you have to know if you're capable of handling that. You know, uh, because especially with remote work, it's that much more important that you show up when you're supposed to show up. Otherwise, people start to question your trustworthiness.
mm,
So Michelle kind of covered the whole boundaries thing, though. So I would say it's also really good to be adaptable. Things will always go wrong. They're a lot harder to prepare for than they are at home. At home, you know what the systems work like, what types of things to expect. You have some sort of basis on which to judge things. Even if uh, you know, were raised in Florida and then you start just traveling around the United States, vast, you're going to encounter some differences from one state to another in terms of how different things work. Maybe different levels of sales tax or something like that, but mostly it's the same. You can trust that gas is the same, fuel is the same, that the way credit cards work is the same. Whereas if you get to Southeast Asia and you're used to paying for everything with a credit card, and you show up and all you have is a credit card, you don't have a debit card to take money out of an ATM, you're going to find quickly that you're fucked, because nobody takes credit cards in Asia. I shouldn't say nobody, but like, it's a lot harder to find people who, for the most part, you have to pay for things in cash. So adaptability, ability to like think on your feet very quickly and not get super flustered when something goes wrong and you suddenly are like, I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight. You'll figure it out. Trust yourself. Strong sense of intuition is really nice, especially for a female. But not just a strong sense of intuition, a willingness to listen to your intuition. And if you feel those weird tingles on your arm, the hair on your arm is standing up because when somebody's talking to you, listen to it. Don't take a chance. Just walk away from that situation and assume they're probably not well-intentioned, and just save yourself that headache. It's not worth it.
I think on the note of adaptability, I'd like to add that because you're traveling, your workspace setup is also most likely going to change every time you move. So you'll see that a lot of digital nomads carry like a laptop stand and, a mouse and sometimes a separate keyboard as well. But like, don't expect to have the same amount of desk space, or not every co-work will give you a second monitor or a second display that you can use. So like, be adaptable with that. And then something a bit more specific to working as a digital nomad is a backup internet solution. You cannot rely on hotels, Airbnbs, or whatever to have good Wi-Fi that always works. Even your favorite cafe that always has good Wi-Fi will have a day where suddenly it's down on the day of an important meeting. So always have local cell service available, or that you at least know a backup spot or location to go to. So like, I always get a local SIM card and put it in my phone, and that way I have data in most locations, which is enough to cover emergency meetings and whatever else falls under that. But that one is, I
How
would say,
hard is
very
it to get a
important.
local SIM card?
Not hard. It's very easy. America makes it really hard. When I visited the States last year or 2 years ago, it's a pain in the ass to get your SIM card in there, an American one. If you travel abroad, you can go to any convenience store and they'll do it for you. It takes 5 minutes and you've got your, like, they'll have a plaque on the checkout counter stating like, this is how much you can get for this amount of money, and you can top it up at their location or online as you go.
And they'll do the whole thing for you,
usually.
easy.
They'll do it for you. You just have to give them your phone.
SIM card cost?
SIM cards doesn't cost anything.
Oh, it's just
cell service. Yeah, cell
you
service.
pay for data.
A cell service outside of the States is incredibly cheap. I would say, actually, in Southeast Asia, at least in Thailand, I don't know about the other countries. Like, when you show up, they sell SIM cards at the airport. You get off the plane, and after you've gone through customs, all the shops and kiosks and stuff that are there on your way out, you can just pop in and buy a SIM card, and with a base amount on it. And then when you need to top it up, you can usually just go to the 7-Eleven and just give them $10 and they'll throw more data on it.
And you can get
take
cool.
Take a few minutes to research which provider provider you want, though, because in most, let's say, first world countries, it doesn't really matter what provider you get, they'll cover everything. But if you go to third world countries, only the best provider, quote unquote, will have full coverage everywhere you go. Some cheaper, or like you get more data for you. Sure, they might work in the bigger cities and more visited places, but if you're going a little bit out of the beaten path, like the beaten path, I guess. What is it? Off the beaten
Off the
path.
beaten
That
path.
one. Like you go a little bit that way, then you'll notice you lose service quite quickly. So always, it's worth it to spend a bit of extra money, which in the grand scheme of things is not that much more.
Yeah, when you're
But
saying extra money, it's $5. Like it's a difference of $5.
Yeah.
Because
don't be
we're
cheap on that.
talking cheaper currencies. On that note, though, just to kind of tie it into what I was saying about making sure you show up, is that's one other reason to make sure that um, every time you're capable of showing up for a work commitment, you do. So that if you do have that random situation where your internet goes out or there's a natural disaster or whatever, like, and you just can't show up, but you have a data or whatever to send a Slack message or an email to say, I'm so sorry, there was a tsunami, and all the internet is down. Like, it's a thing. It happens. You know, there when I was in Thailand, it was a tornado and there was no internet in the area for like a week and a half. It happens. But you want to make sure that that's a freak occurrence and your clients know that they can that's a freak occurrence, not, so you don't really want to like use up your sick
You
day.
don't want to have you don't want to make a habit of that.
Like, you don't want to say your grandma died and then have her die because, well, she already died. So
Well, you just have to tell them you got more grandmas.
yeah, well,
But I'm
you
sorry,
can
sir.
only
Did
use
you only
twice.
have one grandmother?
I mean, I only had one, but you can you can only use that
Well, they don't
excuse
know that.
twice, though,
You don't have to
right?
tell them everything you know.
Uh,
Okay, well, look, tell me this. So you got no experience and you want to be a digital nomad and you say, I've got a laptop, I've got $1,000, I'm off. And you go, but you got to find some way to make money. What is the best way for people who are new and don't have experience to find places to work or find jobs?
Not on Upwork. Um, at some point in time, I will do a whole rage session on why I think that's not a good place. But um, uh, if you are not used to looking for jobs, in that regard, there's lots of different networking opportunities online. So Slack, Discord, uh, Facebook groups, um, websites that are dedicated to certain types of networking. So Roy, Michelle, and I, for example, are all part of a group that's called Superpath, that is for people who do any level of content marketing. And all of us, work in different things that could qualify as content marketing. So we're all in that group. And that group shares a lot of contract jobs, long and short term. And so things like that are great ways to find jobs that actually pay sufficient amounts of money, not Upwork, that aren't, and they're not overloaded with a bajillion people who are charging cheaper rates than you are. But also like in person. Michelle and his business partner have been known to occasionally just do an exchange of goods. Hey, give us a free tour. I'll give you a 45-second video. in exchange so we can add it to our portfolio, and give us a review, so that you can kind of help build that portfolio and get more clientele in the future so that you can reach out to people who do have money to pay you at some point.
I think it's safe to add to that, to not necessarily being vocal about it, but like let people know what you do as you travel. So like if you're always working in a little corner away in a cafe somewhere else, like no one's going to know what you're doing. But if you are, I don't know, photo editing on a laptop in the middle of the hostel, people will walk by and they will look on your screen and they'll be like, oh wow, what is he doing? And you start a conversation with them. And that is how you also meet people that might be interested in services. I was walking around with a camera one day in Portugal, and some random guy approached me and he was like, oh, what do you do? And I told him what I do, and he was like, oh, cool, I'm in need of some pictures, can we shoot some pictures this week? And I was like, yeah, fine, let's do it. And just because I had a camera in my hand, people approached me and they were like, hey, I'm in need of your services. So yeah, just like let people know what you're doing. And like most co-working spaces or co-working hostels, whatever, they will have like these networking events. I don't necessarily call them that, but like you're all working remotely, so your conversation about what you're doing, whether that's around the table or, you know, playing pool or whatever, like let people know what you do, and not necessarily promote yourself, but just share, and people will know someone that is in need of you offer.
I think it's also a little bit more organic to just, in those types of situations, if you're talking about how you've been traveling for a long time, it becomes quite easy for people to just ask you straight out, how do you fund your travels? What and like it doesn't become, it's not this taboo conversation the way it is in kind of normal society to talk about like where you get your money. So I think in normal society we tend to ask, well, what do you do? Well, as a traveler, what you do for money is not necessarily the first default that you're going to answer, because what you do is travel. But you know, people might be like, dude, you've been traveling for 6 years. How are you funding this? And it gives you this really organic opportunity to, oh, well, these are the things that I do to earn money. And these are the skills that I have, to kind of go along with what Michelle was saying about the photography thing. On the flip side, he and I were staying in, we talked last week, we stayed in this castle in France, and there was another girl who was staying there at the time we were there. And just by chatting, you know, we were there together for days. So just in conversation, it of course comes up that she's a wedding photographer. And we had gotten in a couple months before, and Michelle just started asking her some questions like, you know, how do you get people to be at ease? Because he works as a photographer as well. They bond that a little bit. And he just asked her, like, how do you get people to be at ease when you're taking photos so you can get such great shots? And she, you know, gave him some pointers, but then said, let me just take out for 20 minutes and I'll just give you a quick little freebie photo shoot and you can see what it is that I do. You can experience that.
Very nice.
She did that for us. And
Wait,
we are now asking her to come back to the Netherlands to be our photographer, our wedding. So by doing little things like that, she gave us 20 minutes of her time for free and just really enjoyed it, made it fun for us. And now when we have the money to give her, you know, for services that we need, she's the person we've thought of. And we're like, we're going to fly you in to come do our
Anne-Marie,
wedding.
you know what that light means, don't you?
Oh, it's
For the
time
lightning round.
for the lightning round.
For the lightning round. Okay.
Do-do-do-do.
Go fast. Here we go. is it possible for someone to become a digital nomad with no prior experience traveling, working remotely, or running a business? Go.
Yes,
Yes,
we
but I
answered
wouldn't
that.
recommend it.
I'm talking no experience. They're not going to go out and get any experience traveling. They're just going to be like, hey, I've never left my neighborhood. I have never done anything other than work in an office, and boom, I'm gone.
Look, if you're stubborn enough to make it work, right? Yes, I think it's
I was going to say,
possible.
if you
I
have the
would not
drive and
recommend it.
motivation to do it. But yeah,
Oh no,
you
That's a
can.
positive
drive and
spin on it.
drive and motivations from just being too stubborn to fail.
What is the biggest misconception about becoming a digital nomad for people who don't have any experience in it?
It's
For
expensive.
Americans, yeah. Well, go ahead.
I know I was going to say, that's a misconception. It's not more expensive. It's cheaper than just
It's
staying at
cheaper to
home.
travel than it is to stay at home most of the time. I was going to say for Americans, there's this huge misconception that you can get out of paying your taxes that way. Like about that thoroughly in a different episode about finances. But sure, you can get out of paying the first tax on the $150,000 that you earn, but you cannot save for retirement if you do. So that's a very, very
How
common
about
misconception.
an essential tool that every digital nomad should have in their arsenal, especially ones with no experience? New nomads, newbie nomads.
An essential tool.
It could be anything. It could be like good judgment or a credit or a bank card with 0 foreign transaction fees or a
Yeah,
safety net.
that's the
So I
way
think
my
you
mind was
expanded
driven.
that.
Have
Um,
a bank that
I,
works
yeah.
internationally and a card that works internationally, preferably without any withdrawal fees or anything like that, or like a cheap currency conversion. You can get those separate. Wise or TransferWise, whatever you want to call it, or Revolut. Like you can apply for
Bunk.
those, outside of your normal. Like you wouldn't have to give up your own bank. You can just use it as a payment processing software.
I would also say having a good safety net is essential. So just enough on hand to get home. And by home, I mean the country that you are a citizen of, where you're allowed to like go get a job if you if fall flat on your face, and a couch that you can sleep on for a while you get back on your feet. Yeah.
All right, Anne Marie, it's time for your final thought.
My final thought. I'm
Any
so bad
last words
at
of
this.
wisdom?
I'm thinking. Give me a moment.
It'd be funny if you kept thinking until it just shut off.
That would be funny.
If
I
so, to be
think
continued.
in general, just look on YouTube. There's tons of people that explain how to become a digital nomad. They all have the same 10 tips, but they all have their own take on it. So watch some videos
Watch the
about it.
rest of our
Read a book
videos.
about
How's
it.
that for advice?
Yeah,
Subscribe.
all our previous
Smash
episodes.
the
My
like button. Smash the keyboard buttons and make a comment and then smash enter.
But my actual final words of wisdom are that when you first start being a digital nomad, you may experience a lot of months of like anxiety and panic and stress, discomfort. Just keep going. Like, just go through it. Eventually, that will stop. You will learn about yourself. You'll gain so much confidence in yourself. And at least from my experience, it put anxiety bed for me together in general. Like it
I
just doesn't
wish
happen
that
anymore.
the video just cut off when you're like, you will experience stress, anxiety, moments of deep loneliness, and then just black.
Well, it's about to just go black. So subscribe, uh, and we'll see you next
Tell your
time.
friends.
I'll actually see
Tell
you
everybody
next
at your
time.
tell everybody at your hostel about us.
Mhm.